Let's start. You're in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, looking at what's going on around the outside of the Democratic convention. They didn't let you inside, did they?
No, we were not allowed to participate this year. We actually did attempt to register our event, but we got an email back from Demlist letting us know that our views were contrary to the party platform, which is, of course, the reason why we exist in the first place, and that they would not be adding us to the schedule this year.
When you say we, you mean?
Democrats for Life of America. Well, we had about 10 activists that traveled to Milwaukee with me to demonstrate in the days leading up to the actual convention. And then we were able to draw, I would say, roughly 25 people to the in-person event there at Zeidler Park.
I did see your part of your presentation outside. I saw the talk by Katrina Jackson. I missed the one by Dan Lipinski. But it looked like you had a good rally. Did the newspapers follow it up?
You know, we got coverage leading up to that event, but I haven't seen any follow-up media on that particular event that we did, but it was really exciting. There was a ton of energy. I think it's one of the more visible things that DFLA has done in the last several years. And it really is a culmination of all of our efforts at the Democratic debates this past year.
How many of the debates did you get to?
All of them. I can't remember how many there were, but we didn't miss any.
Last time we talked, we were in New Orleans at the Humanize Conference, and we had just seen a really great presentation by Katrina Jackson. And of course, she was the author of the law that was struck down in the June Medical Services case by the Supreme Court. What do you think is the strategy now for the pro-life movement going forward once that was declared unconstitutional?
Well, that's a very broad question. I'm not sure. I'm the Supreme Court expert on strategy for the Supreme Court, but I would think that we're probably going to go towards pursuing heartbeat bills, because we know many of those will go to the Supreme Court, or at least one will. And I think that at this point, the pro-life movement is moving away from the idea of admitting privileges in general as a way to tackle this law, and going directly to the heart of the issue, literally, and bringing it back to the reality that abortion does end a life and stop a beating heart.
What is the general mood in the Democrats for Life right now? Seems like it's been one roadblock after another, and there's an effort by the DNC to ostracize you, to just push you out of the picture completely. That's got to be tough. What do you see any bright spots?
Yeah, definitely. I think the fact that they are pushing us out so aggressively is the bright spot. The fact that we are gaining a majority that at least wants to see late-term abortion more restricted, and certainly is not comfortable with taxpayer funding of abortion. So I think that this is a huge opportunity, and quite frankly, their aggressive efforts have put a fire under a lot of pro-life Democrats. We're seeing unprecedented growth for Democrats for Life of America. Every day, we're doubling how many people are reaching out and engaging with our content online and volunteering to help with these efforts. So I think that the Democratic Party has made some mistakes in terms of going so extreme in their position. That's ultimately going to be one of the ways the pro-life movement is going to gain traction on this, and it's their own fault.
That's good to hear. That's exciting to hear. And the other kinds of things that I'm looking forward to, it would be wonderful. The Tennessee state legislator, John DeBerry, who had been in for 26 years, and then the Democrats pushed him off the ballot as a Democrat, and he's running as independent. It would be wonderful if he won as an independent. So there are a bunch of things that could be really exciting to see happen this year, and that would be one of them. Changing topics here. Last time we talked, you were deeply involved in the battle over the University of California buying fetal body parts, and that's still very much a live campaign. Can you bring us up to date on what's happening there?
Yeah, absolutely. We are deeper into this campaign than we have ever been. We have waited a year for UCSF to disclose documents that were requested in July of last year under the Freedom of Information Act, which they completely failed to deliver on until just like a couple weeks ago. And what they've given us really is not exactly what we're looking for. So we're just going to keep looking. But we did have a lawyer reach out and let them know that, you know, they would need to comply or we would move forward with a lawsuit. Now, we know that this is on the radar of a lot of people in the surrounding areas. We've escalated our efforts to actually going outside of Building 3, which is where they do the humanized mouse projects there at the University of California, San Francisco. They're at Zuckerberg Hospital, right where the Women's Option Clinic is. So we have been using the megaphone, making a big scene. We've collaborated with a new group called the Society for Ethical Research, which was established to address the UCSF issue specifically. And, they're also going to be addressing other issues related to unethical fetal tissue research. But we're very encouraged by the ethics board. This week for the NIH, they rejected 13 of the 14 proposals that for fetal tissue research. And so that's really encouraging to know that they are protecting these infants really from this type of research. And, just to remind your listeners that these projects are not relying on embryonic stem cells. These are late-term human fetuses between the ages of 18 and 24 weeks, supplied on a monthly basis. And in order to do these procedures, they cannot use feticide because it would ruin the tissue for research. So they can only do these procedures completely live. It's either a fully live dismemberment procedure or a medical induction, which, according to the Society of Family Planning, a pro-choice organization, results in born alive infants up to half of the time. And we know that their age, because of their age, that most of them would be able to survive on their own if provided medical care. So this is the example of abortion extremism in America. This is as bad as it gets, and we need to highlight fetal tissue research projects as much as we can when we're addressing abortion extremism, especially as it relates to the Democratic Party, because most pro-choice people would not be okay with what's happening there.
Can you bring our listeners up to date? How long has that been going on?
Well, the Humanized Mouse Project has been going on roughly 20 years. There is an establishment group of doctors that have worked there for roughly the same amount of time, including the chancellor of the entire university. The funding of the institution and specifically their abortion program goes way back to the 1950s and 60s with Warren Buffett. We've got Packard and Bell involved, and Bill Gates.
Mm-hmm.
And they're heavily involved in the development of RU 486 and the distribution of it, including the abortion pill campus bill in California and efforts across the country to institute telemedicine, which would allow the abortion pill to be prescribed simply through talking with a doctor over the phone rather than having an ultrasound to ensure that there's no ectopic pregnancy and that it's a safe procedure to proceed with safe. So it's very problematic. Their relationship with the expansion of abortion worldwide is problematic. They are the most involved medical institution politically worldwide on this issue.
You used the term humanized mouse, which not everyone is going to be familiar with. What is a humanized mouse?
My understanding is that a part of the human thymus is taken and implanted into the mouse in order to create a humanized immune system. It creates a humanized immune system within the mouse that can be studied. And it is intended to study and develop therapeutics for very serious diseases, especially AIDS and HIV. And so it's very sensitive research, but the problem is that there are ethical alternatives. It just would require systemic changes to their procedure and protocol.
Related to that, that's part of what David Daleiden and Sandra Merritt were pursuing when they were doing their undercover films, for which they are now on trial. And can you bring us up to speed? You've been witnessing a lot of that action because it's in San Francisco. Where do we stand on that?
Well, we're just kind of waiting at this point for things to move forward. We don't have, as far as I know, we don't have another court date set. We most recently, the judge combined two of the charges, ultimately, reducing the charges yet again, which has happened slowly over these past several years. Several of the charges have been dropped, but David and Sandra are still both facing, I can't remember how many at this point, but several felony charges, bogus felony charges. And now, on top of that, the individual who was actually in charge of this investigation to begin with, and who ordered the raid on David Daleiden's home, illegally seizing his information and now using it against him in court and completely violating his First Amendment rights. She's been nominated as Joe Biden's running mate for Vice President of the United States of America. So this has catapulted David's story back into the spotlight where it needs to be. We know that David's work contributed significantly to attitudes about abortion going into the last election. And I think that it is crucial that the pro-life movement uses this opportunity and platforming off of the election to ensure that David's story is told, and that the pro-life movement remembers that we still need a victory for David. And ultimately, a victory for David means indictments for Planned Parenthood. And indictments for Planned Parenthood means no more government funding, probably. So I think there's some things to look forward to. And even though it seems like Kamala's the worst case scenario, I think that we can use this opportunity to remind the people of this country of how extremist one can actually be, and how badly she is continuing to damage David's reputation, and the work that the pro-life movement does on this issue.
I'm glad you brought her up, because that was going to be the next place I went with this, and ask you about her. She gets called a moderate sometimes. Is that an honest description of her?
I mean, I would say that I can see why someone might say that. I think that she can be kind of an establishment moderate, and the fact that she runs kind of off of a progressive platform, but then really does embrace very sometimes right-leaning policy, especially as it relates to law and order. And I think, though, that she really does work hard to position herself as like this true progressive. But yeah, I think it makes sense to be skeptical of that. She's obviously not a true progressive. A true progressive embraces a whole life ethic, which she does not. But on top of that, she's really unwilling to embrace a platform that can help with the racial injustice that's happening in this country. And I think, obviously it's ironic because she is a woman of color, and that is an amazing feat. It truly is shattering the glass ceiling for so many young girls out there. I think that is spectacular and amazing. But I think that most progressives, especially in San Francisco, and people who are involved with the movement for Black lives, they're very, very concerned about Kamala Harris and her positions as they relate to racial justice issues.
Thank you for being there. If this COVID had not come up, I had planned to be there in Milwaukee. I had planned to come to San Francisco to sit in and support David in his trial.
Yeah.
Of course, all of that is off the board now.
We'll be back at some point.
I'm following it closely, and if situation allows it, I'll be there. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your trip. Travel safely. All right. Thank you, Terrisa.
Goodbye.